You know, when the Washington Post looks at your story as nonsense, you have a problem. And you have things that you need to answer for. The Guardian at this point needs to come to Jesus and own up to the fact that the story that they produced was fabricated. That Luke Harding, this guy who's pushing this thing for Russia collusion, without necessarily being able to show the collusion, at least when he was disemboweled by Aaron Matei in the conversation that they had on the Real News Network, and he leaves in a huff, not able to show what his book says, Russian collusion with Trump campaign. Writes an article for The Guardian. And in that article for The Guardian, that's supposedly a bombshell, that bombshell is trying to insist that Manafort met with Assange at the embassy, even though there's no records of the meeting taking place. It never happened. It was a fabricated story that The Guardian ran. Now, this was supposedly the link between Trump and Russia that has been so elusive that the Russiagators have screamed and cried about for 2 fucking years. You've cried about this and have not been able to show any connection between those two things. This was supposedly the link. This was the we got him. Fucking got him. That's what this was supposed to be, was the chest thump, the triumph. It was a dud. It was a fabricated story that was roundly vilified and shown as such. And The Guardian went dormant when people started asking real questions like, hey, how come nobody else has corroborated this? How come there's no video footage? I mean, the embassy is full of video cameras. How come there's no document? Well, how come there's no counter information for this? How did you come to this particular conclusion? The Guardian went dormant. Even the Washington Post, even the Washington Post has establishment newspaper, has started asking questions like, this doesn't seem to be making sense. This doesn't seem to fly. There are a lot of questions about this, and this bombshell has turned into a dud. Let's take a look at the story in the Washington Post. I'm going to make this one quick because I've already done the story calling this a dud and calling this fabricated, but I like the fact that the Washington Post is even looking around. The most establishment newspaper in establishment newspapers, maybe if it's going to be outdone from the standpoint of being an establishment newspaper by the New York Times, even they look around as like, this seems kind of mysterious that nobody else is corroborating the story. Let's take a look at this. And this even includes Glenn Greenwald, the lion himself. I call Glenn Greenwald a lion. I think he's awesome. The Guardian offered a bombshell story. Let's get this out the way. About Paul Manafort. It still hasn't detonated. I like the turn of a phrase there. Democracy dies in the darkness. By the way, before I get into this, if you guys enjoy the content, well, I always like to see people when they're talking. It's like I like to know the person's name or who I'm talking to before I'm being derisive or before we're having a debate. If you guys enjoy the content and you dig what I'm putting down and you find yourself showing up at this show often, please consider supporting the content. And please, even $1 helps, either through PayPal or Patreon, or in this case, through Super Chat or Streamlabs, however you want to do it. If you can't give a financial donation, please consider liking the video or sharing the video. That's if you like it. If you don't like it, don't like the video. Or sharing the video. All of it helps. So let's get to the news. The Guardian offered a bombshell story about Paul Manafort. It still hasn't detonated. And one more thing. Trump looks like a millionaire trying to play what he thinks is a billionaire. Putin is a billionaire trying to play a Bezos-aire. This and more will be revealed in Space Force 5, The Search for More Money. That was Baltazar. So shout out to Baltazar. They didn't get the opportunity to show on the last video. Right here. It seemed to be another bombshell story amid all the revelations about an investigation of Trump campaign ties to Russia. The Guardian newspaper reported last week that Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign chairman, had met with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange several times, including during a critical period in March 2016. The story suggested that the meeting, I like that. The story, because right off the bat it's showing a certain degree of skepticism. The story suggested that the meeting in London could be a key link in Special Counsel Mueller's investigation into the Trump campaign. If such a meeting occurred, it would establish a first direct contact between one of the president's associates and WikiLeaks, which began releasing hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee in the summer. Okay, I don't know what some weird stuff is going on there. In the summer of 2016. The emails stolen by a Russian agent and passed to WikiLeaks proved damaging to Trump's opponent, Democrat Hillary Clinton. All right, let's keep going. But 1 week after the publication, The Guardian's bombshell looked as though it could be a dud. No other news agency has been able to corroborate The Guardian's reporting to substantiate its central claim of the meeting. News organizations typically do such independent reporting to confirm important stories. The Guardian, which is based in London but has a significant American presence, has stood by its story, albeit somewhat half-heartedly. It has said little to defend itself amid mounting criticism. The lead reporter on Manafort article, Luke Harding, declined to comment on Monday, I bet he did, and referred to questions to the newspaper spokesman Brenda O'Grady. In response to questions about O'Grady, reissued the same statement that The Guardian has stuck by for the past 6 days. The story relied on a number of sources. We put the allegations both to Manafort and Julian Assange representatives prior to the meeting. The publication. Neither responded to deny the visits took place. They have now. And if I'm not mistaken, WikiLeaks said they weren't given a chance to respond. They just ran the story. Manafort has said this is utter nonsense. The Guardian, however, did tweak some of the language in this original report to sound less definitive in its conclusions. The original refers to the meeting, but that was updated to the quote-unquote apparent meeting. That's called a step back. WikiLeaks on Monday identified the alleged fabricator as Fernando Villavicencio, I went for it, an Ecuadorian journalist and quote activist. Let's put quotes around that. A government ministry under Ecuador's previous government accused Fernando, I'm not going to go for it again, of fabricating documents. A fabricator was a co-signer on the article with Luke Harding, who he himself has wrote the book on collusion and needs collusion to be a real thing since he wrote the book on something that essentially is a conspiracy theory. Also, they hid the fact that the fabricator was part of the article, was part of the team. Let's keep going. The story doesn't specify the date of the alleged meeting. In addition, no photos or videos of Manafort entering the embassy have emerged. The Guardian is silent about whether its reporters saw any such photographic evidence. Greenwald notes that the embassy is surrounded by cameras that record who enters and leaves. If Paul Manafort got anywhere near the building, let alone 3 times, there would be mountains of evidence in the hands of Ecuadorian intelligence officials who the Guardian cited as sources for the story. Essentially, where's the beef? Where's the beef? Did Manafort have such pull that they cut the video cameras off and didn't allow him to sign into the embassy as he slid into the embassy? Does Manafort have an invisible cloak like on Harry Potter? Now, if Manafort has an invisible cloak like on Harry Potter and Robert Mueller comes across it, then fair enough, then that needs to be exposed. If there's video evidence that needs to be exposed, if there's any signature of Manafort as he goes into the embassy that needs to be exposed, all of those things need to be exposed, and all of those things will be determined by the Ecuadorian government. This seems a dicey story at best. And shout out to Washington Post for saying so. Shout out to him for saying so. I'm going to leave this here. Like I said, I don't want this one to be long because I've pointed to the story before as being nonsense. Right here. The Guardian story relied on unnamed sources and internal documents written by Ecuadorian intelligence agency that lists Paul Manafort as one of several guests at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where Assange sought refuge in 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden for alleged sex crimes. The newspaper said the documents also mentioned that Russians were guests at the embassy, but the story didn't identify any individuals, nor did it reproduce the documents in question. Take our word for it. A bunch of anonymous sources, and they ran with the story. I love this. I love this. It goes into the history of Julian Assange and everything else, but that's not necessary for the conversation that we're having right now. Look, these guys are doing their best to get Julian Assange out that embassy. They're going to do whatever it takes to get Julian Assange out that embassy. From the standpoint of the intelligence services, they want him out, meaning they're leaking information to certain people who will be receptive to that information and produce that information without many questions, especially because all of the incentives in the world go for them to release that information themselves. I'm talking about Luke Harden. Having a fabricator as being part of the people who are releasing the story should put into question the story in and of itself. But that said, beyond that point, the lack of evidence is overwhelming in this case. Good job, Washington Post. More to it, good job, Glenn Greenwald, in putting questions to these guys. And by the way, one last thing before I leave. WikiLeaks is suing The Guardian for libel because they've been putting out numerous stories that WikiLeaks says are baloney. They're suing them for it. They've come up with a GoFundMe account in order to fund the legal bills that will be necessary in order to prosecute The Guardian for libel. Let's take a look at this. This is the GoFundMe account. WikiLeaks launched a legal fund to sue The Guardian for publishing an entirely fabricated story. Manafort held secret talks with Assange at the Ecuadorian embassy, which spread all over the world. It is time for The Guardian to pay the price for fabricating news. Agreed. Help WikiLeaks sue The Guardian over a fabricated story. My language may be slightly off from saying prosecute. I don't mean prosecute in the sense of like a prosecuting attorney. I just mean prosecute their lawsuit. They're suing them for fabricating the story. I guess it's under libel laws. They're up to $42,000, $137. Good on you. This campaign is trending. Good on you. Good on you. Don't take any shit from them lying down, especially if they're continuously lying about you. Make them prove what they're saying in that story. And God, I would love for there to be consequences for this, meaning them losing in a lawsuit and them having to pay WikiLeaks, because that will be one of the definitive and declarative cases that they lied, that Luke Harding is full of it. And the embarrassment that he suffered from Aaron Matei would just be a pleasant day on the beach compared to the embarrassment that they're going to suffer when they lose that lawsuit. Good on WikiLeaks for not taking any shit off of The Guardian. So I'll end this here. Like I said, I didn't want to keep this one all that long. Stephanie Chateau, going back to Super Chats for a while now that you got them back. Having too many issues with Patreon. Oh, Stephanie, I understand. I got your thing, by the way. Look, I appreciate anybody that assists the content, either through Patreon, Super Chat, sharing the videos, whatever. Don't feel any kind of way. I mean, it's not one of the benefits of the show, and for me, my own little personal hang-ups. I don't like people doing things if they don't want to do things. I hate it. I have a hard time asking people for things. I have a hard time asking people for help, even when doing the show itself. In the beginning of the show, and even now, it pains me to ask people to assist with the show. I mean, fact of the matter is, in order for this show to keep going, the show needs a bit of assistance from the audience. Don't feel any way about that. Like I appreciate any help that you give to the show. If you're a patron, if you're PayPal or Super Chats, I appreciate it all. So, thank you very much. And I will leave this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Xavier Foster, do you know where the term conspiracy theory comes from? It's very interesting. I thought that there was a way that the CIA kind of made a theory in order to, or use the term in order to stop people from having dialogue about certain issues. That if you could essentially smear them as quote-unquote conspiracy theorists, you can put a chill on the language and stop dialogue. So people talking about UFOs and aliens, well, we don't want you to talk about things that are off this planet, so we're going to call this stuff conspiracy theory in order to put a chill on that particular language or that particular dialogue. It's morphed into all sorts of topics that people don't particularly like other people talking about. That's my understanding of it. So I'm going to Super Chats because it becomes a big argument about me using Patreon money to fund other patrons, people I like. So I'm going to Super Chat others with my own money because it becomes a big argument about me using Patreon money to fund other people I like. I don't understand it. I want to support. It's complicated though. Patron snitches on me on who I'm donating to and the person funding. Oh, I see. It's, you don't necessarily want everybody to know who you're donating to. I feel you. There's a certain degree of anonymity that's necessary. I understand, Stephanie. No, I do understand. I totally understand. Look, thank you. In general, for all of your support. Thank you. However you do it. Thank you. Yeah, patron shows who you patronize. They deleted some of my comments. I'm a WikiLeaks supporter, but what's up with Julian Assange being raised in the Australian cult? Oh, Jesus Christ. The family, which is believed to be a CIA. Okay. I'm skeptical of that already. He's okay with Jimmy Dore because he saw them posting my art on the regular. So just avoiding arguments. Fair enough, Stephanie. That's fine. All right. I'll end this here. Thanks, Carl. I'll see you in a few.